Our theme at camp this year was Well Done. At least part of the inspiration for that theme was a song by a group called The Afters. Part of the song goes like this: what will it be like when my pain is gone and all the worries of this world just fade away? What will it be like when you call my name and that moment when I see you face to face? I'm waiting my whole life to hear you say, well done, my good and faithful one. Welcome to the place where you belong. Well done, my beloved child. You have run the race and now you're home. Welcome to the place where you belong. My first acquaintance with this song was not as a camp theme. In the fall of 2018, my younger brother Joy died unexpectedly at the age of 63. As we were preparing for Joy's memorial service, my youngest brother Eddie shared the words of well done. Part of that song was printed in Joy's program for his memorial service. The phrase, well done, comes from Jesus' parable of the talents. Read with me from Matthew chapter 25, beginning with verse 14. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey, who called his servants and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents of money, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received the 5 talents went at once and put the money to work and gained 5 more. So also the one with the 2 talents gained 2 more. But the man who had received the 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received the 5 talents brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with the 2 talents also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who had received the 1 talent came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid, So I was afraid and went out and hid your talent in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown, and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. Take the talent from him, and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. For everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Jack Lewis said of this parable, the parable of the talents continues the theme of watchfulness, but stresses the need of activity while watching. Larry Chenard said, the focus of the story is upon how each servant discharges his responsibilities during their master's absence. This parable presents 3 scenes. First, the distribution of the money. Second, the use of the money. And third, the accounting of the money. We consider first the distribution of the money. The parable of the talents teaches us to use God's blessings properly. The wise use of their time in serving God. The wise use their time in serving God. And Jesus tells about a ruler who leaves his servants in charge of his possessions. To each he entrusts a large sum of money. Now we usually think of the current definition of talent, an ability. But in the first century, talent was a measure of money. First it had been a measure of weight. It came to be a sum of money. And it was a large sum of money. We notice that the master gave to each servant different amounts of money. To one, he gave the 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1. And notice that Jesus says, each according to his ability. He gave them what they had the ability to use. As I said, a talent was originally a measurement of weight, but it became known as a sum of money. In fact, it became known as a sum of money equal to 6,000 denarii. Since a laborer could expect to earn 1 denarius for each day's work, 1 talent represented more than 16 years' income for the average laborer in the first century Palestine. Some have even said it was the equivalent of 20 years' wages. In other words, 1 talent was a large sum of money. And while these 3 servants did not receive equal sums of money, each received a huge amount, and each according to his own ability. Well, we see the use of the money. The first 2 servants go out, they put the money to work, they double their master's money. And then we have the 3rd servant. He's quite often the man in the parable who gets the most attention. And he's the one who didn't do anything. He didn't use his talent. Now, he buried the talent he had been given. Now, it could be that your parents or your grandparents didn't trust banks because of the Depression, and they hid their money somewhere in the house. There's the old story of stuffing the money in the mattress. It was a common practice and an approved practice in the first century to bury your money, to hide it somewhere in the ground. And this is what the 1 talent man did. He wanted to keep the money safe, and so he buried it. Well, then we have the accounting of the money, verses 19 through 30. We have the first 2 servants who come in, and each of them reports that they have doubled what they had been given. Because of that, they receive a reward, words of commendation. Well done, good and faithful servant. The master tells them that they've been in charge of a few things. He's going to put them in charge of more things. In other words, they get a promotion. And they are to come and share their master's happiness. We find that the master valued productivity over mere preservation. The proper use of resources and opportunities result in even greater opportunities to use one's abilities. And then we have the 3rd servant. The 1 talent man. He comes, he's so different than the other 2. He blames the master for his problems, and he admits his fear. He says, I knew you were a hard man. You gather where you've not sown. You harvest where you've not sown. You gather where you've not scattered. He says, I was afraid. He was afraid of failing. And so he buried the money. Well, the master's words to him are certainly a contrast with the words to the other 2. Instead of good and faithful servant, this one is called wicked and slothful. The words the man had used against his master were now turned against him. By playing it safe, this man had lost all. The parable, stressing the moral law that is what is not used is lost, warns against indifference and sloth. Of the 3 servants, only the 1 talent man failed to please the master and was punished as a result. His mistake was not in doing evil. He did not waste or steal his master's money. His error was in not doing with his master's money what he was expected to do. And according to verses 24 through 28, he was so afraid of doing something wrong that he did nothing right. The problem of the one-talent man was not that he only received one talent. It was that he failed to use it. If we are two-talent or one-talent Christians, we can still do a great deal in the kingdom of God. The one-talent man may have thought that losing his master's money in a risky business venture would bring severe punishment. Burying the money was a safe way to go. But the master was not impressed with the servant's excuse. Once he received the money, he obligated himself to use it. As we think of this parable, someone summarized it this way. The first two were determined to make a profit. The third was determined to not take a loss. The first two were willing to work hard and take risk. The third took no risk. The first two received the gift. The third refused the gift. The first two wanted to advance the master's domain. The third had no interest in what mattered to the master. The first two viewed the money as an opportunity. The third guy saw it as a problem. The first two allowed the master's gift to change their lives. The third refused to let the gift touch his life. The first two invested. The other one wasted. The first two saw a blessing. The third guy saw a burden. The first two knew the master. The third guy had no clue. President Theodore Roosevelt said, "Do what you can with what you have where you are." The key point being made in this parable is that it's necessary to faithfully serve according to the abilities and opportunities. We note the setting of this parable. Jesus was with the 12 in Jerusalem. Most of his ministry was spent in Galilee, but they're now in Jerusalem. He is just a few days away from his crucifixion. As they're there in the big city of Jerusalem, the 12 comment on the beautiful buildings, and it was an impressive sight. The temple was 16 stories tall, and it was on top of the Temple Mount, what remains today. And the city of Jerusalem was set on a hill. You could see the temple a long way off. It was an impressive sight. And while the disciples say, "Look at these marvelous buildings," Jesus says, "The day is coming when not one stone will be left on another." Well, this raises some questions in the disciples' minds. Said, what's the sign of when this is going to happen? What's the sign of the end of the age? And in their minds, if the temple got destroyed, if Jerusalem got destroyed, that would be the end of everything. It would be the end of the world as they knew it. They really asked two questions. Well, Jesus proceeds to tell them, okay, here are some things that are going to happen that are not signs of the destruction of Jerusalem. And then here are some things that are signs of when it will happen. It is said that the early Christians paid attention to the words of Jesus, and that when the Roman armies got ready to invade Jerusalem, that the Christians had left Jerusalem and were spared. Jesus answers both questions. The second question, he shifts and he says, "But of that day and hour," he's referring to the second part of their question, what will be the end of the age? In other words, when will you come again? He says, "But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the Son, only the Father in heaven." When Jesus was on this earth, he did not know when his second coming would be. So Jesus proceeds to say, the second coming will be like the thief coming. Thieves do not call and make an appointment with you to come and burglarize your house. They want to show up preferably when you're not there. They do not give warning. Jesus gives the illustration of the one servant who was left in charge of the servants. And there would be the good servant in charge who would take care of the other servants. There would be the one who would abuse them and would neglect them. He would just eat and get drunk. Jesus says, if the master comes, and he will come at an unexpected time, that unfaithful servant will be punished. Then he gives the parable of the wise and foolish virgins. 5 were prepared for the coming of the bridegroom, 5 were not. The message of that parable is always be watching, be ready. Then we come to this parable of the talents. What do you do while you're waiting for the Lord to return? That is the point of this parable. And Jesus is saying, you are to use what you've been given. The next parable of the sheep and goats gives some specifics of how we serve. Well, we've all been given talents. Yes, we've been given money. We can also make the application we've been given abilities. We've all been given, 168 hours in a week, whatever that adds up to. We all have resources that we can use or not use for the Lord. And it's important to use what we've been given. Most of us in the room remember the Merv Griffin show. A couple here don't. It was a good show, wasn't it? One day a guest appeared on the show, and he was a bodybuilder. He had spent months, probably years, building up his muscles. And as he entered with his huge muscular frame, the crowd went crazy with applause as he flexed his muscles. He walked over to take his seat to be interviewed. Merv's first question seemed to catch the bodybuilder off guard. Merv asked, "What do you use all those muscles for?" A bit puzzled, the bodybuilder simply stood up and flexed his muscles again. The crowd applauded wildly. He sat down. Merv again asked him, "What do you use all those muscles for?" And again, with a puzzled and somewhat frustrated appearance, the bodybuilder stood up and flexed his muscles again. The audience cheered. Well, Merv was undaunted. He insisted a third time, "What do you use all those muscles for?" The bodybuilder was stumped and had no answer. All he could do was sit there and look bewildered at Merv's constant question. The man was all power, but with no purpose. While he could impress the audience, there was no application for all this power. On the other hand, there are some individuals who've built up their strength. They may have built it up not through weightlifting, but through actual work. And if you have a heavy load to lift, you pick them to come help you. They use the ability they have. And the point of Jesus' parable, whatever you've been given, while you're waiting for my return, you put that to work, you use it. Edward Schweitzer said, "Where God's gift has already borne fruit, God gives in superabundance. Where it has remained fruitless, it is lost completely." This means that God's gift can never be passively possessed. It is like a muscle. It must be worked and stretched, or it withers. And so we need to ask ourselves, am I doing the Lord's will with the blessings He has entrusted to me? Not just my money, but my time, my abilities, and my possessions. This year, Debbie and I have attended the memorial services of 3 friends. All the deaths were COVID-related. All the individuals were Christians. At their services, a common theme was that the person had lived for Jesus. If not directly stated, it was certainly implied that each one would one day hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant." The parable of the talents is a warning and an encouragement to be active in service to Jesus while watching for His return. The song by the Afters continues. What will it be like when tears are washed away and every broken thing will finally be made whole? What will it be like when I come into your glory, standing in the presence of a love so beautiful? I'm waiting my whole life for that day, and I've I like this next line. I will live my life to hear you say, well done, well done, my good and faithful one. Welcome to the place where you belong. Well done, my beloved child. You have run the race, and now you're home. Welcome to the place